Bernstein Show. Now, here's Ed.
John Douglas. It's a famous name.
Yeah.
It's a very famous name, but this is the John Douglas who is multifaceted. We're here at Animazing Gallery here at the Palazzo Hotel, and you have some amazing artwork that is here, as well as some amazing other skills that we'll talk about in a minute. Well, maybe I should say, I mean, you play drums. You've played drums for a lot of very important rock groups over the years, whether it's Aerosmith or ZZ Top or others, right? I mean, and you've created incredible drum sets. So you're doing remarkable artwork here at Animazing Galleries here at the Palazzo. Okay, let's talk about art.
All right.
Because we were chatting before we started the taping about there seems to be some sort of synergy between playing drums and artwork. Now I got to tell you, my wife is a drummer and an artist.
Oh, cool.
There's several other people that you and I both know who do both. Is there a connection between those two things? Because they seem to me, if I was going to guess who would be an artist, it would be more of a violinist, somebody in the strings, right? I mean,
someone more musical.
Yeah, somebody who's more delicate. I guess.
I don't know the answer to that. For all I can do is speak for myself, in that music and art have always gone hand in hand with me. It's like I thankfully have never had to choose one or the other. There are times where I focus more heavily on one or the other because I can't do them both simultaneously. But I think it's probably more common than we know among artists and even actors, or that have the two-dimensional creative side of artwork on canvas or paper or sculpture or whatever. I know, like Jane Seymour popped at the top of my head, and I think there's a long list of creative people.
Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, exactly. Whether they're musicians or actors or poets or maybe playwrights or whatever, right, that dabble in the arts as another creative outlet. And I don't think it's exclusive to drummers, but there does seem to be a lot of rock drummers that create art as well.
Which talent did you discover first?
I think it's pretty safe to say that the drums, only because of before I can remember, my earliest memory would tell me that I would bang on my mom's pots and pans with wooden spoons until I found her knitting needles that made great drumsticks, and then they would bend and break and didn't make her happy. So I think I was banging on pots and pans before I could even hold a crayon. So I think the drums came first. It's way more primitive, Right. So and I took both in public school, and that's all I could do. Is if I wanted to learn drums, I had to be in band, and it took art in school. And
were you good in art?
I didn't really get any recognition until 8th grade. I moved to Texas, and my 8th grade art teacher was really pivotal, where she recognized something in me, in what I was doing, and would push me to do better, to challenge myself more. And that's, teachers are so vital.
Oh yeah,
and
motivating.
And underpaid and underappreciated and all of that. To have a teacher at a pivotal moment for me, a pivotal time to recognize a talent and kind of nurture it and challenge me and push me set me more serious down that road.
Right, and but if for that,
correct,
you may not have ever pursued it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when you're a young boy and you're living through self-esteem issues and other issues at that age, and you have a teacher who's noticing a talent like that, I mean, that's a wonderful thing.
Because I was terrible at anything athletic. And for boys, that's what they're all about.
Right.
At that, all during school, and I'm like, I don't have an athletic bone in my body, So drums and art were my only
Now you're here in
saving grace.
You're here in Las Vegas. I'm looking around the gallery. I mean, there's a significant number of just large pieces of art around the gallery here. Seems like it takes a lot of time to create all this artwork. And I know you're currently playing drums for Aerosmith here in Las Vegas during the residency.
Right.
Where do you find the time?
Well, there's quite a bit of time, even on a normal tour schedule. You know, it's really, you know, you're 2 hours on stage. They always say it's the other 22 hours in the day that get you into trouble, or that they pay you for. You know what I mean? Because it's the 2 hours that you're playing. That's the joy and that's the fun and that's the highlight of that day. And the rest is travel or waiting or, you know, just laying around a hotel room or whatever. So that's where you can get into trouble. And for me, I'm just wired up to where I need to be productive. And so I started painting in my room years ago, even as a crew guy, you know. So you roll into a city, and I look for a blank wall on a hotel wall, and I unroll my canvas and I go to work, and I just feel better, and it also kills all that downtime, and theoretically keeps me out of trouble. But and at the end of X amount of time, I have something to show for it, other than the work of playing, or, you know.
And you must be familiar with every major art store in the United States.
Well, I try to, yes. And I've got my tools down to what kind of like a science, where I like I say, I paint unstretched because it's necessary. So I roll the.
Okay, well, explain that.
Yeah.
When you say
Okay, so these are all stretched over wood, and so when I paint, the painting looks a lot bigger when I'm creating these, because the canvas has like 6 inches on each side. So it's just, and I paint the image, and it's just taped or thumbtacked to the wall in hotel rooms. So I also am used to that hard surface, because before I was doing this, I still paint a lot of drums and guitars. So I kind of learned how to paint on wood, on a guitar or a drum, like that surface. I really kind of learned how to paint. And then so when I went to canvas, because I'm traveling and because that's the surface I'm used to, that's what I do. And then I roll it around a PVC pipe so it doesn't get bent. And I shove it in this black tube that most of the time will fit in the overhead compartment of a plane. And I carry black paint, and I carry white paint, and I carry some brushes, and I mix my paint on a drum head. And I carry that in my suitcase, and that's it. That's what I travel with, and that's what I use.
Got it down to a science.
I do, yeah.
And what about typically when you're painting on a canvas or an easel, you have a certain height that you're dealing with. It sounds to me like when you're painting, you mentioned drums and guitars and walls. I mean, the heights are different. Is that?
Yeah,
create changes?
It does, you know, and also the other challenge in hotel rooms, besides finding a blank wall, because the art that they have in hotel rooms now, they have it anchored in there. You can't just take it off, you know. But it's the lighting. It's the other challenge in a hotel room, is to find the lighting. And then you see these. I put a lot of drips in my painting. I kind of like that texture or look. And so I'll take the painting into the bathroom or the shower and do that, so I don't ruin the carpet in the hotel. So I have a lot of photos of a lot of these paintings hung in a bathroom or a shower, which is not very glamorous, but it does the job.
If I were to buy a painting, I'd like to see the Polaroid to that too.
It's the challenge of the workstation that I'm in at the time, you know. So
do you use a photograph as a guide?
Yes, I typically work from 2 or 3 different photos, and I build my image in Photoshop. Like I'll pull the head off one photo, and I'll pull the body off another, or I'll pull the left arm. Like that Bono painting is at least 3 different photos. His head is from one photo, and that right arm holding the microphone is from a totally different photo, and the leather jacket and I think maybe the necklace from a third photo. And I build them all in Photoshop, which is a bit of a Frankenstein thing. But I have learned to enjoy that process. And I do that because, number one, I don't want to step on the copyrights of the photographers. Now, some of them I know, and I get permission from time to time. But basically, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. And also, sometimes I just can't find the perfect pose, and I want to build the perfect pose. And then thirdly, that a lot of these images don't exist like they are anywhere except for on my canvas. So I kind of enjoy that process.
And your show is here at Animazing Gallery for how long?
Well, most of the art is hung now, and I have two events. I have the opening on Friday the 9th from 6 to 9 p.m., I think. And then on the 10th from 7 to 10 is a VIP invitation-only thing that I'll be here. And then the paintings will be here for a few days or a week or whatever afterwards.
But I noticed you have some original work and you have some AP artist proofs. So you have some variance in prices as well.
Yes, and I think I think it's safe to say of these are the originals, and when the original sells, so I try to have the image represented here, and it's an AP, and there's quite a few uniques in that's a giclée printed on canvas, and then I come in and paint by hand on top of that. Like I paint a lot of black and white because I love black and white, but then I'll come in and hand paint some color one at a time, and so that no piece is the same, So, and then a lot of those get signed by the person that I painted. Whether it's there's a lot of these are obviously Aerosmith, Steven Tyler, who's nice enough, and Billy Gibbons from ZZ signed my painting of him, and so it adds an extra little something.
Oh, for sure. Now I was really jumped ahead because this is the end. This is where we are today.
Yeah.
If you look around this gallery.
Yeah.
But it didn't start here. I mean, it started.
No.
Where did it start? It started with you painting instruments.
Yeah. I started being a drummer myself, and somewhat of an artist. I wanted my drums to look cool. We're talking mid '80s back in Texas, and so I wanted my drums to look cool and unique.
At that time, in the mid '80s, when you were looking around at other drummers, was there a drum set that really got your attention?
All of them did, but in particular, the Myron Grumbacher, who played drums for Pat Benatar in the day, had some really super creative drum kits, and he had a lot of them were custom painted, and they were set up really creatively. Alex Van Halen of Van Halen, amazing drum kits. Not so much custom paint, but the setups were really over the top and really creative. That sparked my imagination both as a drummer and as an artist. So those two off the top of my head in my formative years, I thought, okay, well, I can do that myself.
To your own drum set.
Yes. Yeah. So I started doing that in Houston, and then eventually the band I was in at the time got pretty popular, and the guys from ZZ Top who live in Houston would come see my band play. So eventually I met Frank Beard, drummer from ZZ, when I was playing, and he looked at my drums and said, "Oh, those are cool. Who did that?" I said, "Oh, I did that."
And what did they look like at that time?
I'm not sure which kit that was. I think it was a Yamaha Recording Custom. The first kit I painted for me, I didn't know how to get the shiny showroom finish.
How did you even know what kind of paint to use?
I didn't. I just made it up. I mean, I just used the paint that I was used to, which is acrylic.
Right.
Now, in the drums, when the drums are you can buy drums in two types of finishes. They call it a lacquer finish, which is like a paint or a stain or whatever, and then the other one is wrapped. It's wrapped in plastic, and it has different sparkles So I didn't want that, so I wanted custom paint, and because they were called a lacquer finish, I thought, well, I'm going to use lacquer. Wrong.
You can't paint on top of lacquer?
You can, but it's just not very durable. Modern car, it's car paint. It's urethane. Right. But at the time, and even now, drums are still called lacquer finish, but nobody uses lacquer. I think it's outlawed even in California, most places. It's just not as, chemically, it's just not near as strong or shiny, and the film build doesn't build near as fast as modern urethanes. So the first kit I did lacquer, but it looked fine. And that's the one that Frank saw. It wasn't any portrait or anything. It just looked like an abstract oil painting to me, which I don't do. But it looked unique. And so Frank from ZZ was like, "Would you ever want to paint drums for me?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." Yeah. I never thought of it, So he's my longest running client. I don't know how many. I know I've done over 20 drum kits for him over the years. So, and then it just, as they would play, the same thing would happen. Somebody would go see ZZ Top.
All word of mouth.
And they'd go,
right.
"Wow, your drums are cool. Who painted that?" And Frank would give him my name and number, and word of mouth.
So you've painted drums, you've painted guitars.
Yeah.
Right? There's something, you did a famous painting of a guitar. You want to talk about that with Joe?
Oh, yeah. So, I did Joe's guitar, which is commonly known as the Billy guitar, which is his wife's name. So I was contacted around 2000, 1999 or 2000, because Joe wanted somebody to paint a portrait of his wife on this guitar. And he had seen a drum kit that I painted for ZZ Top 6 years earlier on the David Letterman show. And so somehow they remembered this, and somehow they contacted me. I don't even know how, but I get this call. Joe wants to paint his wife on front of this guitar. So they sent me the raw guitar from Gibson, and we bounced around the ideas, and he sent me a Polaroid that he took of his wife, that with the smile that he loves about her, and so that was my foot in the door of Aerosmith as an artist, that I painted his guitar. And then later meaning a few years later, I thought, you know what? When I started doing canvases, because at that time I wasn't doing canvas, when I started doing this kind of work, I thought, I'm going to paint a picture of Joe playing the Billy guitar. So it's kind of like, that painting was done by the guy that painted that guitar that's in the painting. I just thought that was cool. Just for me. I thought it would be cool. Yeah. So I did it. I was at home at the time, and I painted it, and I called up Joe's guitar tech. I said, "Hey, did this painting of Joe playing the guitar. If I send it to you, can you get Joe to sign it for me? Just, again, for me." And he goes, "Yeah, we're up at Joe's house now recording a solo record. Send it on up. Here's the address." So I sent it up there, and apparently Joe sees it and goes, "That's my album cover." Again, not intended. I didn't even know he was making a record. So that was his solo CD of "Have a Guitar Will Travel." So that became the album cover, CD cover, whatever you call it. It's just kind of it's serendipity.
And at that time, because I need to catch up quick.
Sorry,
that's okay.
A lot of stories.
I mean, you've had an interesting career, and you had a lot of happenstance that has happened to you, and along with talent, luck and talent are great things to combine.
To combine, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But you are technically a drummer, a tech? Or what's the proper term?
A drum tech.
Drum tech.
Every guy in a band
Can you explain
like these
that?
guys. Yeah, every guy in these big successful bands that I've been fortunate enough to work for has a guy that maintains their instruments, tunes their guitars, tunes their drums, sets up their drums, do whatever they need to do their job of performing. Right. So every guy has a guy. So it just kind of happened by accident when I stopped pursuing being a drummer, because I couldn't make any money. I had a baby, I had a daughter, and I just had to face reality that, show business is very difficult, and to quote unquote make it in music business is difficult then, and even more so now. So I at that time I had been painting drums for Frank, for ZZ, for I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it was. And he he kind of knew what I was going through, and he said, "Hey, come be my drum tech," which I had never considered before. Listen, the worst part of being a drummer is having to set up all that crap.
So you get the worst part of the job.
But not the best. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the idea of doing that, setting up drums for somebody else to play is like, oh my gosh, that's the furthest thing that I would ever want to do. But at that time in my life, I felt like I didn't have any other...
Have a kid and you had to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I had responsibilities, very real responsibilities.
So then there became a point in time where you got to sit in for some drummers.
Yeah. Well, first with ZZ. Yeah,
ZZ
we were in Europe, and Frank had an emergency appendicitis. One night at like 2 a.m., I got a phone call in Paris, and I just gone to sleep, and the hotel room rings, which is jarring, and it was another crew guy saying that they just hauled Frank away on a stretcher, and you're playing the show tomorrow. And I thought it was a practical joke, because that's what we do on the road, is practical jokes to pass the time. So I said a few choice words to him, and I hung up. And he called back and said, "No, seriously." I said a few more choice words, and I hung up. Then Billy Gibbons, guitar player, calls me in my room, and now it's about 2:30 in the morning. And he does, Mr. Douglas, time to step up to the plate. And so then I thought, okay, now Gibbons is known for some practical jokes too, but now this seems a little more real. So let me tell you, when you get that call, you don't go back to sleep.
No.
So I didn't.
You start practicing?
Well, you can't in a hotel room. I don't know what I did, but I wasn't sleeping. And so I played 3 shows with the ZZ. That's the very next day. I played that show, and then we moved on to other cities, and then we had a few days off, and Frank healed and came back. So I played 3 shows with ZZ Top, and with no rehearsal and no sleep. And I thought that alone is.
It's the baseball equivalent of being a pinch hitter coming in the bottom of the ninth and hitting a home run, right?
Yeah. Or the water boy.
And then a number of years later, the same thing happened. Not the same thing, but something similar with Aerosmith here in Las Vegas. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Same thing. Joey fell, the drummer, Joey Kramer, fell the night before, late at night or something, and jacked his shoulder and his neck, which is serious when you're a drummer, So I got the phone call that time about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a show day here in Vegas, So same thing, like, no rehearsal, but at least I slept the night before. So that was a bonus.
And how did you do that night?
I got through it. It was a miracle. I'm pretty convinced, because everybody in the audience is doing this, and it's going to be, on the internet before I get to my hotel room that night, and be there forever. So there's no pressure, and and I don't go back and look at it. I'm not, but I know it's out there. But I think it was, like I say, it was a miracle. I got through it. I think expectations were low. So I think.
And you're still doing it when they need you.
I still do. Yeah, I'm still here.
I could talk for another hour with you on this, but we're running out of time. And I was curious on what some of your personal favorite pieces were that are here.
That's kind of like who's your favorite kid? I always like to think it's the next one. There are elements that I like, and I try to. When I'm creating, like I say, when I'm creating my images to paint from, I also try to find maybe interesting textures in their clothing or something to make the painting either I know is going to be a challenge for me to do, and or is going to make for an interesting composition and a nice piece. So sometimes I look at like the dress for Amy Winehouse. I remember choosing that, thinking, okay, that's interesting. what is that called? I think gingham, I think is what that's called.
But it looks like something she'd be wearing.
Yeah, and it was.
Yeah.
But I knew that I knew it was going to be a challenge. But let me tell you, when it was way more difficult than I thought, and I can remember regretting it as I was trying to achieve it. But I keep going until I did it. And the same. And then some of them I have a more personal attachment with, like that Eddie Van Halen one. It's like
right.
I've worked for Van Halen for 25 years, so I have a lot of love for the band and for Edward, and that's the first painting. I've done 3 or 4 different paintings of Ed. And that's the first one, the only one I've done since he passed away 2 years ago now. So that one for me, has a whole lot more
meaning.
Yeah, meaning, sentimentality for me, and obviously some of the later. Same with the Aerosmith ones, because now I'm sharing the stage with these guys, so it takes on a new meaning for me above and beyond the art.
Well, it's simply marvelous pieces.
Thank you.
They're all here at the Animazing Gallery here at Palazzo. We have 2 galleries, right? One at the Venetian, one at the Palazzo. This show is here at the Palazzo.
Yep.
And it will be here for a few days, so it's
I'll be here
amazing.
Friday and Saturday.
You'll be here Friday and Saturday. The paintings will be here for a few days after that. And there's affordable ones that are prints and some masterpieces, which are moderately priced, I would think. Well, thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. So get down here at the Animazing, and it's because it is an amazing place with some amazing artwork. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.